Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football. We've got your Week 12 waiver wire video to help you guys get ready for the upcoming games. We've got 3 amazing games for Thanksgiving. Every team is playing this week, which is awesome. No buys to worry about, but there are a couple injuries and of course a couple standouts that really did well in week 11 that you may want to consider adding, especially with their playoff schedule. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that like button while you are here, and let's jump right into it. Now, the first player I want to talk about is Marcus Mariota at the quarterback position. He's really the only quarterback I mentioned as a possible pickup. If you watched our other waiver wire video, we mentioned Deshaun Watson because he is coming back in a week. So he's another one you may want to consider. But Marcus Mariota versus the Commanders this week, he's available in 57% of most leagues, has seen some success the last 2 weeks with over 17 points in fantasy, with an average of 2 touchdowns per game, whether it be through the air or whether it be through the ground. On top of that, Mariota has a nice little playoff schedule that could be really good for someone who doesn't have a great quarterback, but maybe streams a quarterback weekly. He's got some great games coming up for the rest of the season to may consider and play to kind of fill in for those type of situations, especially if you're in a super flex. Mariota is a great second quarterback. Now that's it for quarterbacks that I think it would be, again, some good waiver wire pickups. Deshaun Watson, obviously, if he's available, you should be grabbing him because, again, he starts in a week. Now, as far as running backs, I got Samaje Perine versus the Titans, available in 92% of most leagues. Now, Perine obviously filled in nicely after Mixon got hurt due to the concussion that occurred. If Mixon is obviously out, which is a very good chance, Perine obviously becomes the RB1 and should be a nice little RB2 for you this upcoming week. Most of the damage Perine did was through the air. He scored over 30 points in fantasy and had 3 receiving touchdowns. Obviously, that's not going to happen again, but he is a good filler, especially for any of you Mixon starters that you maybe need to handcuff him, or maybe you just want to kind of steal Perine from that Mixon owner. I would definitely look at grabbing him. Another running back you may want to consider is Latavius Murray versus this Panthers. He's available in 77% of most leagues. Look, the backfield for the Broncos is a mess. There's no real clear running back who they're going to start every single week. And typically the starter is Melvin Gordon, but they're more of a hot hand situation. But if you don't have a lot of depth on your team, or maybe you're a really, really deep league, or dealing with some injuries, obviously at your running back position, Murray's a good fill-in. He's a great grab. He had over 17 rushes. He had a touchdown, plus he had 4 catches in the air. He had some value. And again, I think because realistically, I think this offense just doesn't want to utilize Melvin Gordon. At least I don't know why. Murray is a good little filler. Again, maybe a slight flex play depending on the matchup, but I like Murray as someone you're definitely going to grab if you have a deep league, maybe you have injuries. Again, he's available in 77% of most leagues. He's been a decent running back since he's gotten to the Broncos. Now, as far as receivers, I've got 4 guys I want to mention here. I've got George Pickens versus the Colts. He's available in 35% of most leagues. Pickens really has developed a strong rapport with Pickett. And I think a lot of that has to do with the offseason. He's also scored a touchdown in each of the last 2 games. Now, I'm not one to ever chase touchdowns. You don't want to chase touchdowns as far as starts or waivers. But with Claypool gone, obviously, with Chicago, Pickens is the clear-cut wide receiver 2 and sometimes gets him a little more targets than Deontay. Deontay is the clear-cut 1, but I love the rapport that Pickens and Pickett has gotten. And again, being that he's going to get plenty of those targets, Steelers typically play behind. I like Pickens as a really good pickup. Treylon Burks is another guy I'm considering. He came back from his injury last week. He's going against the Bengals this week. He's available in 80% of most leagues. Burks is now 2 games back from his injury. He had a great game on Thursday against the Packers with 18 points and over 100 receiving yards. He didn't score, which is okay. Burks is definitely the clear-cut wide receiver 1 for the Tennessee Titans. If Tannehill can get consistent and stay and perform like he did on Thursday night, which is obviously a lot to ask for, Burks has a lot of value, especially coming up for the rest of the season. He's a nice little sneaky value. Damn, again, I'm going to add him if I've got the depth and, of course, obviously a deep league. The rookies are finally starting to show up. Now, Donovan Peoples-Jones is another receiver I'm definitely talking about. I talked about him before. He's up. He's again in this this waiver. He's going against the Bucs. A little bit tougher matchup, but he's available in 55% of most leagues. He's seen an average of 7 targets a game in the last 4 games with an average of 13 fantasy points. He's a great flex play typically most weeks, and he's got the potential to have even stronger value when Deshaun Watson does come back in week 13. So the fact that he's still available, this is the time you really want to grab him before Deshaun Watson comes back, because if Deshaun Watson comes back and does continue to grow Donovan Peoples-Jones, continues to grow Amari Cooper, that value of those guys are going to be gone. And now you needed him when again, are the playoffs are around the corner. And he's been really consistent. I love the performance he's been able to do. A lot of people have always asked, should you start him? Should you start him? And there are times I've been hesitant, but he's definitely proved me wrong. And he's definitely someone you almost want to start every single week, no matter the matchup. Now, the last guy I want to mention as wide receiver is Darius Slayton versus the Cowboys this week for Thanksgiving. He's available in 49% of most leagues. Now, Slayton may not be a great value this particular week against the Cowboys, but with Wandell now missing time due to a torn ACL, he's out for the rest of the season. The receiving core is just depleted for the New York Giants. Now, I know there's obviously a visit coming up with Odell Beckham Jr. That's a possibility of him going there, which obviously his value would skyrocket. But for Daniel Jones, there's not a lot for him to throw to. You got Richie James, who you could also consider, Darius Slayton. Galladay pretty much doesn't exist. Bellinger, their tight end, still hurt and out. And you got Saquon, which is really hurting Saquon because let's be honest, besides Saquon, no one else is afraid of the Giants. There's no one on that team. But I like Darius Slayton as a nice little pickup. Again, if you're desperate at wide receiver, he's someone I definitely am going to grab. He's available out there. Now, as far as tight end, I've got one guy, Juwan Johnson versus the 49ers. He's available in 70% of most leagues. Now, this is a bit of a touchdown chasing waiver. But Juwan has been solid the last 3 weeks. He's averaged 13 fantasy points. He's had a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. The trend I'm seeing is that Dalton is definitely utilizing him more often. He's starting to feel more comfortable with him. He started to throw more targets his way, specifically in the red zone. 2 weeks in a row, I've mentioned him when people have asked in the comments if he should start. And I've recommended him just because I feel like the Saints offense is having to play catch up a lot of the times. Now, this is obviously a different game this past weekend, but Dalton has used him, and he's been a really heavily targeted red zone player. So I like Juwan as a nice little stretch at tight end because let's be honest, tight end is such a hard position to fill, especially with either really 2 studs this whole season and then everyone else kind of playing catch up or injured. I like Juwan as a nice little waiver wire pickup. So those are my week 12 waiver wires. Obviously, if something happens to the Arizona Cardinals or 49ers players, hopefully nothing happens. But if anything does happen injury-wise, we'll keep you updated. And of course, mention some good waivers there if you need to grab anybody. Obviously, we're hoping for a good, healthy game on Monday night. If you guys do have questions of who you should drop, pick, or if you're still trading, hit us up in the comments down below. Again, we'll be dropping all these videos as soon as we possibly can. We're going to have our start-sit videos dropped Tuesday and Wednesday, so that way you guys are prepared for Thanksgiving. We want to make sure you guys are ready for that. There are 3 games. Remember, 3 games. Have a good turkey day. Make sure you guys check out that subscribe button, check out that like button, and I'll check you guys out next time.